Good afternoon, I'm Anthony Newbo. Welcome back to the Parliamentary Channel's live coverage of the Senate. This is the budget debate 2013-2014. Members are preparing to get started for the afternoon session in a moment. We will hear from Senators Jerome Gomez and Kwesi Thompson, and then Leader of Government Business in the Senate, the Honorable Allison Maynard Gibson, will wrap, and they will go into the heads to complete this process. Right now, as we wait for members to get ready, we're going to let you listen to some of Senator Cheryl Bazard. She presented early this morning. Here's Senator Bazard.
100%. In fact, his absence here is due to his traveling with those children to international competition. I also wish to congratulate him and the team of Bishop Neil Ellis in the Mount Tabor Gospel Baptist Church for envisioning and spearheading such an event that coincides with the generational exchange of the baton in this country's 40-year anniversary. Madam President, you have already warmly welcomed our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Terence Keeley, and other alumni in the chamber have also recognized him, and we're glad to see him here. Professor Keeley, Vice Chancellor Keeley, is a professor of clinical biochemistry and a former lecturer at the University of Cambridge, and also studied at the University of Oxford. So we have a well-lettered man in our midst this morning, and we're so happy to have you in our country, and we hope you have a wonderful visit and enjoy your stay here. Madam President, now the business of the day. Against the backdrop of this being a pivotal budget in the history of our small nation, and one that secures the future for all Bahamians, and I wish to emphasize all Bahamians. Thank you. The Right Honorable Member, our Prime Minister, Perry Christie, has provided a multi-pronged approach against the economic onslaught felt by so many by reining in recurrent expenditure to the tune of $83 million and making room for the growth of recurrent revenue. In fact, it is reported that recurrent expenditure this year is fully $162 million lower than the budget forecast. We're not talking pennies here. We're talking serious savings in dollars. The benefits of this disciplined decrease in spending is an achievement not to be downplayed. One is quite aware of how one feels when a mortgage is retired. The funds used for payment of that bill can now be used for savings for a rainy day or some other venture that benefits the person and/or his family. It is important to note that while reduction in spending has affected areas such as public service, tourism, finance, and the public hospital authorities, the armed forces, educational facilities such as the College of the Bahamas, BTVI, and social service, youth, sports and culture, and urban development have avoided the cuts or trims because it has been and continues to be reaffirmed that these are areas that this government is committed to. However, in the midst of prudence and austerity, the light of compassion has shone through in the extension of stamp tax exemption granted to first-time homeowners for a further period of 5 years to 2018. The Family Island Development Encouragement Act has been extended for a further year. The Family Island Development Encouragement Act offers significant incentives for construction, such as permitting the duty-free importation of building materials for the construction of new buildings or the rehabilitation, remodeling, or extension of existing residential and commercial buildings. Quite a boost for our Family Islanders. The Passenger Tax Act has been amended so that children under the age of 12 are given the $300 exemption on return to the Bahamas effective July 1.
Cheryl Bazard presenting earlier this morning. We're going to go into the chamber as they start this afternoon session and what will be, we expect, the end of the debate on the 2013-2014 budget here in the Senate.
Contributions to the budget debate, and at this time we will resume as many. Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Jerome Gomez.
Madam President, it's a pleasure I stand and today my contribution to the budget debate and to see and to give to this august chamber my views on the overall thrust that this budget will give this government to propel us forward over the next 4 years. I wish to thank the Prime Minister once again for the opportunity to serve in this chamber. And I hope that whatever I do and say here is to the honor and glory of our country, and promote the peace and welfare of this great nation. It's a pleasure to listen to Senator Hunt sweat the small stuff of these days. And I was, and I did all of her contributions, and I appreciate that she gets right down to the little nitty-gritties, and I mean, that's important, I guess, but, you know, it's a $1.7 million budget, you know, I mean, it's big money, it's, you know, I don't know, we need to pick on every little thing, and so I would just see if I could include a number of things she discussed, or supplemented and support the Minister of Youth in his effort to continue to do good works in sports and culture and for our young people. Yes, some things have been cut. We do admit that. But it's interesting to note in the heads, it's interesting to note that we have a line item for the Bahamas Lawn Tennis Association. $150,000. That was in there before. It's new. The National Dance School gets $30,000. A new item again. That helps young people. The Youth Enterprise Fund. Wait, no, the National Dance School gets $60,000. A new item. Nothing was budgeted in 2010, 11, and 12. New item. Then you look at the Youth Enterprise Fund, $30,000 added there. Then we look at the Connect 300, $150,000. Now, I must admit, yes, the volunteer program is in there. But I haven't heard one member opposite or in the other house ever discuss this volunteer program and its success, or any success it's had. So I think it's fair that they should let the PLP do what it wants to do and what it believes will be successful. When we look at programs like the Self-Starter and the Fresh Start program, they've been cut, I agree. But I was part of the venture fund during the previous administration. And we had our challenges. And when they first announced this Fresh Start and Self-Starter program start, I launched my sort of Fresh Start there. So the two programs are there. I told them I really wasn't sure it didn't fall out well. So a lot of people got money from these programs, but I don't know how much success and track record they point to. So I think it's to our benefit. Bahamas striking. I congratulate the owner of the company, but we can't always just pick on one example. I mean, we want some many examples, because I think more than 200 persons have benefited from this program.
How much money was put in there?
Oh, I don't have the number of how much money, but more than, so we have to appreciate that. Maybe we need to pull back a bit to create programs that really work for the people. You can't just give people money and have no way of checking and analyzing the program's success and seeing how well these persons are doing. And so I appreciate her contribution and bringing to light a number of things, but I think we as a government have proven our commitment to young people and sports and culture, and I think we have a dynamic program. I think next time I can do some testing here, you know, I mean, before I begin. Oh, it was on, okay. Oh, well, oh, excellent. Okay. Now, so I think we have a dynamic youth program going forward, and, you know, I think people will be pleased of the things we do over the next particularly this year and going forward. So, I think she need not be disheartened over this. I want to start my debate to really quote from the Prime Minister's budget communication on Tuesday, June 18th, in the other place. And I quote what he said: "We must expect the official opposition, such as they are, to always take a position opposite to our views. They nor their supporters, whoever they may be, and whatever positions they hold, will never concede that a progressive Liberal Party government is doing good for Bahamians and the Bahamas." And I think proof is bearing us out. That is indeed so. He goes on to say that, "I believe in this budget my administration has established a solid foundation for the sustained economic rebound which is now beginning to take place in the Bahamas." Unquote. He then went on to remind the opposition, particularly the leader of the opposition, of two things. One, that coming into office in May 2012, the PRP faced a deficit of $504 million. This was 100% greater than the estimate by the government. Two, that the major contributor to the deficit was capital expenditure, which was budgeted as $280 million, but turned out to be $400 million. $400 million. And then they say we have to borrow. Well, how are we going to not borrow if they gave us so much debt? And the Prime Minister reminded the opposition that we are borrowing to pay back the debts they left behind. So I think the FNM got to stop running from that fact. Yeah. Do not run from the fact that to jumpstart this economy, we had to borrow money to pay off the debts. The treasury was empty. The treasury was empty. Now we tend to have these large numbers, and most of the time, because it's not our money, we tend to simply think about it briefly and move on, right? But let's take a practical look at this deficit. Now remember, the projected deficit was $248 million. However, the FNM spent $504 million. That is $256 million over the projection. Now if this is not truly unbelievable or unthinkable, I don't know what could possibly be. I can imagine I going home tonight and telling my wife I spent our savings, wiped it out on a good time with the boys. Huh? Wine, women, and song, as we say, right? What's she going to say? She say, "Oh, you're a good man. Oh, my good husband. Oh, please come in and give you a kiss and hug you." Right away, trouble, eh? That is trouble. And when she tried to get the money back, I can blame her. See, you spent all that money, baby. But as Senator Smith, you know, and Senator Smith know how to put it on, right? As he stated yesterday, in every election year, the FNM overspends, and overspends big. Now, if it's not a fact, I invite the side opposite to, you know, point of order or clarification, call it what you want, and I will use it, you know. But you might call them the champagne and caviar party, the slash and burn, the smash and grab. And let's not forget the slap and break off running. Right? But Madam President, you know, what 250 million could have done for this country? Well, let me tell you, I just give you a few examples, right? They could have bought all the boats and equipment needed by the Defense Force that we're trying to get 200 million for now.
Yeah.
It could have covered 30% of been a down payment of cost a new hospital. A new $800 million hospital. I think that's the budget. That's what they estimate. Now, it could have built a new prison, a new Supreme Court complex, a new parliamentary complex, and a prime minister's residence, and still had some change left over to buy a couple $1 million worth of police cars. That's what 256 million could have gotten us. And if you wanted to give it away, we could have hired 8,500 Bahamians at $30,000 each.
Wow.
8,500. And then if we didn't want to be so generous, we could have hired them at 15,000 and get 16,000 new people on the payroll, eh? 15 at $15,000 a year. 16,000 Bahamians could have been working, right? But if we want to be generous too, we could have given 300,000 Bahamians a check for $853. Just as they go spend it in the food store, buy yourself something nice to wear. Call it a day. Or we could have given every homeowner in this country $2,000 to pay the BEC. Could have given them a credit on their account at BEC. Turn on their light. Turn on their water. Help the poor. Or we simply could have just taken it all and pay off BEC's bill with its fuel suppliers. Over $200 million BEC owes to fuel suppliers. We could have just paid it off and called it a day. Now, fellow Bahamians, if that is not what we call squandering our fortunes, I don't know what is. Our grandchildren really can't be happy with us when they look back and reflect on this side of a sad state of affairs in years to come. Madam President, this administration will fix it and deliver value for every cent spent. And we will account to the people every step of the way. Madam President, the Prime Minister described this budget as a pivotal budget in the history of our small island nation, and a budget that secures the future for all Bahamians. I agree. He's absolutely correct. This budget stops the country slide down a slippery, dangerous financial slope. We are putting the brakes on. We are not prepared to go the way of Jamaica, Grenada, Antigua, St. Kitts, and the rest of the Eastern Caribbean, where their debt exceeds their GDP. I had the pleasure of attending last month the Board of Governors meeting of the Caribbean Development Bank, sitting around the table with all the CARICOM countries. And when you hear the dire straits those countries are in, you say, thank God you live in the Bahamas. And thank God you have an opportunity to stop the economic decline that we see. We are also not prepared to go the way of Greece, Italy, Spain, and the rest of Europe that are drowning under seemingly insurmountable debt. No, we will not. We will fix the problem. We will bring relief to the poor and dispossessed, create jobs, and reduce crime. I cannot help to refer back to the Prime Minister's address on Tuesday past, which in my opinion was a pivotal address. I mean, it was a delivery of help and hope, opportunity to showcase to the people what his government can do and will do. And he quoted, and this is a quote that he admonished his PLP members in that place, and I think we should take heed of it here as well. He said, and I quote, "As such, we were elected in mighty numbers to secure the future for all Bahamians, and we must be uncompromisingly focused on that objective." He went on to say that we must not be distracted by political maneuvers or even by opinions and views which have no foundation in truth or fact. So we must stay the course, steady the ship, keep focused on our plan. It is our plan. Not be distracted by the noise in the market, by persons who've never met a target in all of the 5 years, they were in power. So how they could tell us how to govern? And today, you know, I mean, it's a pity that the Minister of State for Finance, the former Senator Shivago Lang, is not sitting here, because I would like to speak to him on this, to have been able to speak to him on the first Be Prepared budget that we did. And I say former senator, but and I reflect for a moment. Former member of parliament for Fort Charlotte, former, what's the Grand Bahamas seat, former Marco City, former minister of economic development, former minister of state for finance, former senator. How old is he again? I mean, it seems to be too many formers now. He better get it right, because, I mean, for a young man now, he's racking up a little bit too many formers. So he better, I wish him well in whatever he's doing now, and hope that he can sustain it and keep it going. And so, I mean, I like an impressive resume, but I don't know if I would like too many formers on my resume. Now, our Minister of State for Finance, Michael Hakidas, and he outlined in his address in the other place that our charter is an action plan for 5 years. It's not 1 year. It's a 5-year plan. Don't rush us. We're going to do it methodically. We're going to be balanced and measured in our approach. And we're going to achieve a wide range of objectives that will benefit the Bahamians. But the first things we want to do is this. We want to put the public finances on a solid and sustained footing for the long haul. And that's why we're cutting the budget. 83 million reduced from last year. Reducing the capital expenditure by another 50. We're bringing these things in line. We got to transfer government into a modern administration to provide public services efficiently and responsibly. And I see no one on the opposite side really spoke to any of the other things in the budget that I'll mention later that create some efficiency and economy of scales for the government. We're going to strengthen economic growth and job creation. And we're going to try to build a healthy, more prosperous and secure society. Now, when we look at our public debt and the debt to GDP, we went from 53% and almost to 70% in 4 years. So in the period from 2007, 2008 to 2012, we went from 50% debt to GDP to 70% within a 4-year span. That's a dangerous indicator. That's too much debt. You're on your way to going to 100% and 120. Many countries in the Caribbean are looking anywhere from 110 to 130% debt to GDP. Insurmountable, insurmountable. You know what that calls for? Cutting back civil servants' pay, firing releasement, cutting back healthcare services, education, all essential services. That's when you have problems, when your debt exceeds your GDP. Too much debt is never too good. In many of our personal lives, we face that. Taking on too much debt, it doesn't work. For a country, it leads to lower ratings by Moody's and Standard & Poor's and all these other international agencies we hear about. It increases the cost of borrowing money. And it makes the country less attractive for investment. Investors look at these indicators, and they determine where they're going to spend their money. And we have to be mindful of that. But the previous administration did not seem concerned about any of this. Maybe because its former leader was leaving the scene and say, well, you all fix it, I gone. I don't know. And I will not speculate for fear of Senator Thompson, interrupting my flow. This fiscal plan calls for us to borrow some $465 million in this fiscal year. Now, whereas that is, we're not satisfied at that level, but it's a 35 million savings over last year. So it's a start. So next year we'll cut another 40 million, then another 50 million. We'll keep working our way down, right? But it's a start. You don't run up this big kind of debt and get out of it so quickly. So, although not satisfied the level of borrowing that we have to do, we intend to see that we continue to have reduction in our borrowing and increase the revenue to the Treasury. And that's the key. It's all about how do you get the revenue in the Treasury. Now let's take a last look at the F&M's 4 years in office. In 2008-2009, they forecast a GFS deficit of 2.1%. And let me define this GFS, you know. Trust me, I didn't know, about a year ago I couldn't tell you what it was myself. It's government financing statistic. But all it means, and you know, sometimes we got to break it down, it's just the shortfall between revenue and expenses. That's all it is. It's a big fancy term for just having a shortfall between revenue and expenses. The deficit in that year was 2.1. That's 2008-2009 fiscal year. It came in at 4.5%, so doubled. In 2009-2010, the target was 3.9%. The outcome was 5.1%. In 2010-2011, they said it would be 3%. When you exclude the sale of BTC in that year, the deficit was actually 4.8%. At no time did they even come close. And these are the people who want to advise us how to run this nation's finances? Not even in the ballpark. Then the story goes on. In the last year in government, they said the objective was 3% of GDP. In fact, it came at 5.6%. That's 3%. 5.6. Way out. Way out again. I mean, you see, and these are the people who want to tell us how to run it. When we look at the revenue, and we said we're going to have expenditures of the government of 1.7, right away, 316 million of that goes to debt servicing. Right away, off the top. That's 18 cents of every dollar goes to service your debt, public debt. So you don't have that money to play with, right? And yes, we cut the expenditure by 83 million. But why did we? We did it so we could conform to international agencies, ensure them that we're serious about being fiscally responsible. This was done basically to satisfy Moody's, the IMF, Standards & Poor's. And it also considered our revenue constraints, the constraints on the revenue that we have. We had to show the international community that we are serious about being responsible and financially responsible. And so we made a commitment to cut the fat, and that's all it is, cutting the fat. Now, you take away that 316 million from the 1.17, you're down to 1.4, right? Now, however, your fixed expenses, I'd say, with a relative of your fixed expenses, eat up 50% of that. So another 664 million goes right away. Salaries, electricity, national insurance, rental accommodation, food consumption, gasoline, telephones. So right away you lose another 664 million. Salaries alone for the public service, 550 million. So that's gone. So now what you're left with? So the budget of 1.7 billion, only 736 million is left as way of discretionary spending. And a lot of that is committed in some ways, whether it's through all of the regional and international organizations we're members of and have descendant membership fee, whether the capital works program that you have to do. You have to do some things. You got to clean the parks, the roads, all these things have to be done. So the money is spent, but we can do it. So that is sort of my look at the whole financial aspect of the budget, and to show that as a government we're trying to be fiscally responsible. We're trying to do our part to rein in this runaway train, to see that our debt never exceed our GDP, become strong in the region, to be a beacon of hope to other countries, that they too can control their spending, keep in check their capital programs, and still help the poor and dispossessed, help the young people, create jobs, healthcare, education, still intact. So now let's look at the other bills of the other part of the other packet that came in the budget packet. Let's look at all the other bills that perhaps only Senator Bannister took one moment to discuss in his presentation. And I do this so people can understand or see that there are things in the budget for them. But sometimes we neglect to tell them what is in here for you. Now, when we look at the Passenger Tax Act amendment, okay, all that does is bring the passenger fee in line with what's done internationally. Okay, that takes some money out your pocket, so we're not too happy. So the average consumer might say, oh, well, that doesn't help me, I just take the money out of my pocket, right? But then we look at the Family Island Encouragement Act, where we have an amendment for the minister to allow extensions. Again, exemption from duties and taxes to help develop the islands, right? You look at the City of Nassau Revitalization Act. Again, the amendment allows extensions or exemptions. Many of you look at Bay Street today, the dilapidated buildings all on our key street, our major street. This will allow what? Reduce, no payment of real property tax, duty-free concessions to upgrade and remodel these buildings. It has a benefit. And I hope many of the owners of these properties on Bay Street will take an opportunity to revitalize the city of Nassau. This is our capital. Right. The Excise Act, another change. Now, okay, so it changes the duties on vehicles slightly. And many people might say, oh, I would like to see it have been totally lowered back to certain levels and so forth. But what we miss now sometimes is when you consider businesses who buy cars. A 10% reduction in duty on any vehicle is 10% savings to a business. To an individual, it is a savings. It is a savings. And then when you look at hybrid cars going down to 25%. Oh. All right, that was sure. Okay. Oh man, okay. All right.
Don't get decrease mixed up with increase.
Now, and the remarks Senator Bannister made yesterday was a lot of these things. What he said, they weren't necessary, a waste of time, silly amendments, he called them. But this is law. We're a country of laws and legislation. You have to put it in writing, you have to bring it before Parliament and legislate. And I mean, that's how we do business, so you have to bring it. Can't be silly, right? Real property tax, let's look at that. I think it's an excellent program we've had. Okay, Senator Bannister brings up the definition of commercial property. And if we change that, another attorney in here might, on the opposite side, would say, well, that definition ain't clear. And we'll be back and forth for the next 100 years deciding what is the best definition for that, right? To me, that's a silly point, eh? That's what it is. But I think we have to do these things. It all improves the country in the long run. The business license amendment. Now, in my opinion, this didn't go far enough. And particularly as regards foreign companies. Banks in particular. I think we've increased the taxes on banks. If I had my way, it'd be substantially higher. I mean, I am disturbed that these banks take almost $300 million of this country every year in taxes. Go to some other country and pay 30-40% in taxes. And don't want to give us 3%. We increase it to 3% and they cry. They cry. But you know what I say the solution is? Give some Bahamian banking licenses. Let's move to give Bahamian banking licenses. Let's create active competition in our banking industry. Let's move now. The industry needs competition in commercial banking.
I'll be blind for mine.
Senator Bannister said,
For me.
Senator Bannister said, all the banks will do is raise their fees on Bahamians. So they ain't paying the 3%, they can put it on the backs of Bahamians. And as the member for Tall Pines and the other place likes to say, every time we speak, you can't put it on the back of the Bahamians. You can't put the burden on the back of the Bahamians. And we can't continue to do that. So what you do? You create competition. Let competition drive down fees. Let it drive down costs. That's what it is. We don't have to mandate any legislation in here that says you can't increase this, you can't increase that in the bank and so forth. No, create competition and let the market decide what people do. So that sort of stuff. There was a small amendment here as well. Yeah. There was also a small amendment on the post office savings bank, and that was simply to allow the bank to invest in government securities up to a half. After a half, they only can invest a third of their funds now into it. It's went to one half. Now, post office savings bank, I can speak to that a little later because I think there's great potential there that we're missing. And then there was and like I say, I'm only saying this because this is the closing day of our debate, to really focus Bahamians' mind on the amount of legislation we brought here today with the budget, so they understand. There's an Insurance Act, Bahamas Maritime Authority Act, IRCA Act, Clifton Heritage Authority Act, the Bridge Authority Act. And all these acts were done to create a provision to allow for the transfer of any surplus funds from these corporations into the consolidated fund. And that's good because they are government owned, and if they have some extra money, I mean, put it in the fund and let's use it for education and healthcare and all these things that people need. You know, to go back to the real property tax and the amnesty program. Again, a program criticized by the side opposite and the other place about, oh, you're rewarding people who don't pay their bills and all these sorts of things. It is a good program. And why I said it, if you get 500 million on the books in unpaid real property tax, you really think you can get it? I mean, let's face the reality, man. I mean, wipe the slate clean and let's start this process over. But let people know that, you know, when we come for you, we're coming for you now. If you don't pay it this time, come in. And I advise all Bahamians to take advantage of this amnesty program now. Please look at it. Don't disregard it. You only have 2 weeks left. Take advantage, well, less than 2 weeks, take advantage of this amnesty program. The government needs the money, and at some point in the life of this nation, people are going, the government particularly, and we may not be around in those years to come, but the government will have to actively go behind people for its taxes. It's no longer going to be this pay if you want, pay if you don't attitude. You can be held to pay your taxes. And I was glad to hear that 9.1 million was collected in 3 months. Excellent, excellent, I think. It's a start, Now let's look at the other measures in this budget communication that improves revenue collection and efficiencies and economies of scale. And all of these things, I mean, like I say, in the other place on here, I don't see the side opposite even talking about it at all. And maybe because it's a good idea and they don't want to say thank you, or we congratulate you, or maybe they just didn't read it. I mean, maybe they didn't read the communication or pay much attention. But I wouldn't want to speculate for fear of Senator Thompson interrupting me again. But the Central Revenue Agency, a good idea again, to bring together the administration of a number of taxes under one roof. I think that's going to be a great economy of scale. It's going to bring focus to tax collection. See, when you have 18 or 20 agencies chasing the dollar, I mean, people get distracted. If you have an agency only set up to collect taxes, they can focus completely and they can be measured. The good thing I like about this kind of agency, you can measure their productivity. And if the people aren't performing, get some more, get some new, you know? But you can measure it. You know that you have 500 million taxes to be collected this year. Put the performance indicators in and hold the staff to task to get the money in. Another thing, another aspect I see as well is the Public Procurement Department. Again, in the Ministry of Finance, they intend to create one procurement department for the government. I think this will also bring good economies of scale. And I look forward to that as well, because I think the procurement of goods as it currently is being done is subject to a lot of wastage and overspending. So I think the government, if done properly, that department can save the government millions and millions of dollars. Then, again, the communication spoke to the introduction of VAT, value-added tax. And I think yesterday Senator Bannister read an excerpt from the budget communication done by the acting Prime Minister at that time, Cynthia Pratt, which he said the government was not prepared at that time, and that was 2005. And I really want Senator Bannister to think that all this time, since 2005, the PLP hasn't been giving any thought to this value-added tax. You think all this time we in opposition, we didn't even think about it? I mean, we thought about it. This isn't something we just came up when we got elected May 7 last year and say, okay, value-added tax, we can do that. We thought it through. Some of the brightest minds in this country affiliated with this great party, and we tap into that brain trust. So we thought it through. This is a long way from 2005. Now, what I also like, and I will hold my government feet to the fire on this, is that in the Public Procurement Board, we've made a commitment to give at least 20% of the value of all government procurement contracts to small businesses. We have to spur small business growth. And any economic recession in this country, small businesses is the glue that hold the economy together. Say a fellow who has 3, 4 staff, or 10 staff, or 20 staff, they become like family. And even in the roughest time, he almost feels hard to fire anybody. And he or she does what he can to keep that person employed. Would you have the bigger hotels and other companies? Or they just have these large, large exercise. 1,000 people sit home, 300 gone to the next day. So, because you're a number. But small businesses create their families. They keep their employees employed. So we have to. So I am going to, that's part of this whole thing. I'll be monitoring this, make sure that small businesses benefit, because we have to grow this country. And that's where Bahamians benefit. Bahamians are the small businesses. We have to empower people to become their own employers. Also, I found interesting was the government's commitment now to public-private partnerships. I think the time has come. The government has to realize it can't go it alone. This thing to, every time you do some roads or build a dock or do something, you want to do it alone. Partnership. You know, I think that is key to saving the government money, also taking the administration and management out of the government hands sometimes. So sometimes you just want to be a partner who gave the land or gave some money and then collect some dividends. Let the experts run it. And I have a few examples of places in the government I think can benefit from that. And I go back to that post office savings bank. Some of us don't even remember it exists. Some of us don't even remember it exists. There has to be great potential to turn that into something great. We just let it sit there doing nothing. There has to be an opportunity to create a good private sector partnership to build that bank from what it is today into something similar to the Bank of the Bahamas or what have you. Right? When we look at the post office, which loses money every year, doesn't turn a profit. The U.S. post office has the same problem, and many company postal services in other countries, same issues. Again, there may be an opportunity for private sector partnership with the post office. Even the public hospital authority, healthcare in this country, expensive. Again, private-public partnerships may reduce the cost to Bahamians. Even as far as the prisons. In many other countries, private companies are partnering with the government to run prisons. We got to look at all of these things. In education, The government can't continue to go it alone. It has to look at ways to create, particularly in the United States you have these chartered schools. But for me now, I think what we got to consider is maybe boys and girls schools. Maybe we got to try it again. Try it again, all boys school, all girls school, pilot programs, and let's see how it works. Partner with a private institution, let's see how that goes. How do we save particularly our young men? Saving our young men. So, all of that. And then, I just want to throw in here, the Bank of the Bahamas government has held shares in that for many years. I think it may be time to consider divesting itself of its ownership in the Bank of the Bahamas and letting that wealth flow to Bahamians. Sell those shares to Bahamians and let them give them an opportunity to create wealth by owning the shares. I was encouraged to see the national health insurance now back on center stage. I think we really have to find a way to make national health insurance work. We really have, I mean, it's just too many Bahamians are dying simply because they have no health insurance. I just recently received for our group medical at my firm increases effective July 1st, almost $100 a month. I mean, companies can't continue to sustain this. Now, we pay half of the insurance cost for our employees. Every year there's been an increase. For the last 10 years, there's been an increase. Every year. So how long can a small firm continue to carry that kind of burden, you see? You see? So we have to look at that. We have to look at national health care insurance. So let's turn to some other things in the budget that the average Bahamian will benefit from. Senator Hunt mentioned the $10 million for small home repairs. Well, I think that's... $10 million for urban renewal and small home repairs. Now, she's asking where the $15 million gone last time. Well, they control the Public Accounts Committee in the other place. I mean, do an investigation, call the government to task, you know. But I know we've helped people. I've seen vacant lots cleaned, old homes demolished. I've seen food delivered to old people. I've seen new homes built for other people. I've seen home repairs, bathrooms added into homes. We've done it. We've done it. We've done it. And you know, things ain't cheap in the country. Every time you move a tractor, you know, a tractor wants $200, $300 an hour. I mean, it takes money. These things take money. Man. Then the government has agreed a strategy with the Caribbean Development Bank to give $30 million to education, for special education and the transformation of COB to university status. So $30 million over the next year or several years to now move to special education and to transform COB to university status. I mean, that helps the average Bahamian. That helps the average Bahamian. When we look at construction of new primary and secondary school in Inagua, San Salvador, Gregorytown, Eleuthera, Low San Andres, again, $5.5 million in new schools. And let's not forget what we're doing at Our Lady School, where it's going to be renovated for 100 special needs students. Special needs students, man. I mean, that's where we got to help the most disadvantaged among us. And the government continues to do that. We know where our base lay. We know where our base is. And as we rise up and continue up, we are looking down to help those who are dispossessed, those who are poor, unemployed. So I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged. This is indeed a government of help and hope. Then many hospitals across the nation. The first two, one in Saudi Eleuthera, the other in Cat Island. Look at that. Things are happening, man. Construction of new homes. What, 120 this year? I mean, we're back on track. $4 million for the School of Agriculture, Marine Science in North Andres. Now who's going to go to that place? Lightfoot Key, Eastern Road? Who can go there? The poor and dispossessed. Young people who want to learn something new. It's all about helping the average man. Then an investment of $10 million in new sports facility in the Family Islands. It's part of this whole sports academy concept. We're going to move people, man. We're going to find our best and brightest, give them an opportunity to run around the world, go to the best universities free of charge on scholarships. We're going to do it. Then the National Training Agency. That's an F&M. Oh, no, you ain't owning that one. Okay, you ain't owning that one? Okay. National Training Agency, man. We're going to train people for the jobs we need to fill. Let me tell you, I had occasion a couple of years ago to go to BTVI. But when I went there, I was astonished. Everybody seemed to be studying cosmetology. And I was wondering where we're going to have all these beauty salons. I mean, everyone I talked to, I was like, where are the auto mechanics, where are the plumbers, the engineers, the electricians? Everybody in the cosmetology division. We got to, diversify. Less the big hotels always claim that there ain't enough people. Oh, we got to bring in this one. We got to bring in a maid. No, we can train the staff you need. And that's a step in the right direction. I wanted to address this Bahamian Mardi Gras Carnival thing, but Senator Hunt had conveniently excused herself. But again, please, the Prime Minister was using an example. Mardi Gras light, Carnival light. He didn't say it would be those things. It's going to be our own Bahamian thing. He said he spoke to the Junkanoo leaders, the cultural leaders and icons in this country, and they agreed with the idea. And if executed properly, it will do well for this country. And I agree with you, the execution will be the toughest part. I absolutely agree with the opposition on that. We've got to get it right. We've got to get it right. It's like I spoke with the chairman of the Antiquities Corporation one time. And he wanted to create shows at the fort. And he said, some people were just saying, man, get some little children, dress them up and everything. He said, no, we got to look the part. We got to bring in people who are actors and actresses to look like Blackbeard the Pirate and Jack Sparrow and all the stuff. You can't just grab some people off the street and say, come and do a performance on being a pirate or a British soldier at that time or a slave. He said, you got to bring people who can act. People want to spend that $20 or $50 to come to a show at Fort Charlotte and see some. They want to be entertained by some real talent, man. And that's how we got to get serious about this thing. Now, the final things I'm going to look at is, again, and I do miss Senator Bannister today. In his presentation yesterday, he was questioning, where are the jobs? And he talked, where are the jobs? Where's this 10,000 jobs you all talk about? And he took us a task. But in case he did not hear the Prime Minister address on Tuesday past, let me just take some time to bring him up to speed on where these jobs are. On the Providence, Atlantis is undergoing major renovations of new restaurants and entertainment facilities. That's new jobs. When they open, they're hiring new people. Bahamas, more Bahamians will be employed as the resort and as close to completion. And that's more jobs for Bahamians. Albany continues to grow. Still more jobs as they grow. The jobs are coming. The Paradise Harbor Cove Hotel, the old Flagler Hotel, bought by the World Groups, will be totally renovated. $20 million in renovations, reopened, more staff, bigger, better than ever. The Palm Hotel on West Bay Street will be redeveloped. Again, jobs, more people. The South Ocean Resort is bringing, something will happen there this year. Again, more jobs. There's thousands of jobs right there. We're moving. In Bimini, The Ginting Group Casino coming online, fast ferry service, a new ferry terminal, the upgrading of the airport. All these things will bring new jobs on Grand Bahama. The 400-room reef village will be renovated and refurbished. More jobs there. Sun Wing Airlift. More jobs. That will start. The Grand Lucayan Resort with 542 rooms will open during this budget period. More jobs. In Abaco, Baker's Bay continues to explode. More jobs there. In Eleuthera, Harbour Island, Eleuthera have a number of resorts development well underway. Places like Coco Mia Mama, French Leaf Village, Sky Beach Resort, and others. And Exuma, Sandals, Emerald Isles, February Point are all set to breathe new life into the island. New resorts like Leaf Key and Norman's Key are in the approval process. Jobs in Cat Island, a major residential community, the PGA development will take root shortly. Out of that, low-density hotel, a spa, 18-hole golf course, beach club, other amenities, more jobs. Now, by now, it should be well over 10,000 jobs. I don't know. I mean, about there, about 20,000 for now. Okay. In Salvador, in San Salvador, Club Med will lead the revitalization again, upgrading and renovation the existing village this year with a new spa, 360 new luxury luxury condos will be built. A 5-star boutique hotel to be run by Club Med will also come online. And then a new fuel facility at the airport. Jobs for Bahamians. The future looks bright. We are poised to develop this country. We are on our way. We will not be deterred. No talk to stop us from going forward. Mr. Vice President, I will stop here because I know the side opposite would wish to they probably wish to leave now to get their supporters ready to take advantage of these bountiful opportunities. Make the calls, get them in line, resumes, get it together. We're ready. We will hire anyone who's a Bahamian. F&M, PLP, doesn't matter. Anyone who wants to work will work in this country. I just wish to a moment to commend the AG for the wonderful initiative she outlined in her contribution yesterday, which are designed to break the back of crime. I eagerly await the appointment of additional Supreme Court judges, the trying of serious cases of crime within 12 months, the appointment of public defenders from the Eugene DePuch Law School, and the integrated justice system software. I mean, I think that to coordinate and bring some order to the system, I think along with the Swift Justice Initiative and urban renewal, the back of crime will be broken. I have no doubt. And it's my hope that neither of those initiatives, the Swift Justice Initiative, urban renewal, will ever be dismantled again. Mr. Vice President, I wish to end my contribution by thanking the Prime Minister, his government, the hard-working staff of the Ministry of Finance, civil servants everywhere who helped prepare this budget. And I wish they all stick with the plan. All it is. We have a game plan. Let's stick with it. Let's work it. Make it happen. And with that, I support fully the budget communication and the bills attached today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. As many. Chair recognizes Senator Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, I am thankful, first of all, to God for another opportunity to stand in this honorable house, in this honorable place, and to address the country on the 2013-2014 budget debate. I am thankful also to the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, for his confidence in me and in my appointment as a senator. I also am appreciative of my colleagues who are in this place, and I want to first of all commend them for all of their presentations. Senator Bannister, who is away, Senator Bostwick, who gave a very insightful, forward-thinking presentation, in particular on the issue of tourism, and also with Senator Hunt, who, as usual, was very good and excellent in her presentation. And I also want to say thank you to them for allowing me to be able to wrap up and to be the final speaker for the opposition in the Senate. I also want to commend the Honorable Attorney General, as well as Minister Bell, and all of the other senators of the government. I think that the debate that we've had thus far has been a high-quality debate. I also want to, as has been done previously, give my belated Happy Father's Day to my father, James Thompson, and to all of the fathers in the Bahamas. I enjoyed a very good Father's Day. I spent it with my 3 daughters, Jaden, Jalise, and Jamie, and had a wonderful time. One of the best gifts I got was a bottle of Gatorade. And my daughter said to me, "Daddy, it is because I know you love to play tennis, and when you play tennis you get tired. And I know you love to drink Gatorade. So I just wanted to make sure you had some Gatorade." And trust me, that is, and I'm not going to drink that one. I'm going to keep that one. I also want to, before I get into the meat of the debate, to also, as others have done, congratulate all of the 2013 graduates and to wish them all well. And I think that all of the senators would wish to do that and encourage them. They have gone to a milestone in their life, and we want to encourage them to keep moving forward, keep moving upward, keep moving onward. And we will continue to do our best to support them. Mr. Vice President, before I get into the meat, I do want to make a few comments on some of the issues or some of the points that some of the senators raised. And one of the first points, I believe it was done by Senator Alex Storr, and one of the points that he raised was in speaking to the 52-week program, and indicated that the 52-week program was I believe his words were, a temporary Band-Aid fix. And I only want to draw his attention, and we will be asking particular questions on it, but I only want to draw his attention to the numerous allocations in the budget for contractual workers. And these seem to be new allocations, which in my view indicates that there is going to be a mass hiring of contract or temporary workers. But we will seek to ask the questions during the committee stage, and if the 52-week program was a temporary fix, I asked the question then, these contract workers, is that not worse than the temporary fix? And then the Honorable Senator Frank Smith made some comments yesterday with respect to the economy, and he gave a history of the economy and sought to compare the history of the Free National Movement and the history of the PLP in terms of unemployment as well as in terms of the growth of the economy. And I only say this in response to what he said. You only need to look at and I found to be very useful, Mr. Vice President, is these graphs in the back of the budget communication. And, you know, the graphs sort of give you a very good picture of what's going on. And I only seek to say that under the Free National Movement government, and he made a point about in 1997 that the Free National Movement had the largest deficit in history. That was his point. But what he didn't say was in the very next year of 1998, the Free National Movement had the largest and the highest growth rate that has been recorded inside the drafts. So if you look at the draft in 1998, you will see a peak of 7% growth rate, which has not been equal since. So the point he made about this large amount of spending in 1997 is completely canceled out because it followed that we had the largest and the highest growth rate the very next year. And then he also tried to make the point about comparing the Bahamas to the world stage in terms of their economic development. And he used the years that the Free National Movement was in power between 1992 and 2002 and was making the case that the world was growing at a larger rate than the Bahamas was growing. Well, again, these graphs are very useful because when you look and you compare, and the graph compares the Bahamas with the United States. And in 1996, when the Free National Movement was the government, the Bahamas grew at a larger rate than the United States. In 1997, the Bahamas grew at a larger rate than the United States. In 1998, the Bahamas grew at a larger rate than the United States. In 1999, we dipped lower by 0.4, and in 2000 and 2001, or 2001, it was the same rate. But then when you look also at 2002, 2003, 2004, when the PLP was the government, the growth rate was below the United States. So, only to make the point that when you try and compare these things, the comparison does not pan out. Mr. Vice President, I listened to portions of the debate in the House. And one of the things that I was very disappointed in, I heard part of the contribution of the Minister of Education, and I heard part of the contribution of the Minister of Immigration, in particular the Minister of Education. And there was a portion in his speech that I literally cringed when I heard him speak about the former Prime Minister, Hubert Ingraham. We may disagree in terms of what the decisions were. We may disagree in terms of what the results were. We may disagree in whether or not you have the same philosophy and whether or not we achieve the same goals and so on. We may disagree with respect to that. But in my view, he went on with the only thing I can call as a tirade of, why should you thank Hubert Ingram? Why should you thank Hubert Ingram for this? Why should you thank Hubert Ingram for that? And to be honest with you, I mean, I believe that if the former Prime Minister, my personal belief, that if the former Prime Minister heard, he would not have been affected by it. But my first thought was that if there were children who was listening to this, that it does not send the right message that we want to send to our young people about our former leaders. And we should not send that kind of message to our young people. Because, first of all, I thank the former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram simply for his service. Simply for the fact that for all of the many years he was a member of Parliament, for the many years he was the Prime Minister, I thank him for his service. I thank him for being the leader who presided over the country during the worst economic recession since the Great Depression. And thank him for the many accomplishments that he and the Free National Movement have achieved. You may not disagree or you may not agree, but we certainly can all agree, because we all are politicians and we all know the sacrifice that persons have to take, and those persons who are in the ultimate position of Prime Minister have the ultimate sacrifice, and we all can agree that we should thank them all for their service. We all can agree that persons on the level of Sir Lyndon Pinland, persons on the level of former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram, and persons on the level of the now Prime Minister Perry Christie, we ought to thank them all for their service. Senator Bazard also made a few comments, and one of the comments that she made was that education, youth, BTVI, and sports avoided the cuts. I humbly disagree that they avoided the cuts. And I will go through in my presentation and say why they did not avoid the cuts and why the cuts I disagree with, and why I would suggest that the government not go down that road with those cuts. She also showed us some pictures of the entry point that cruise ships would have to be. And I just want to remind her that it was the Free National Movement that actually made sure that the harbor was dredged so that you could have the largest cruise ships in the world come. And I also want to suggest that after a year in government, that the government, and as she has aware, if it is in that state, then I would suggest that those points be made to the Minister of Tourism, and that the Minister of Tourism should move expeditiously to go ahead and do it. And I had hoped that in addition to those comments that we would have seen in the budget where there was money allocated to go ahead and have those repairs done. And it was actually, and I'm reminded by Senator Borswick, that it was the Free National Movement that had the actual center, welcome center, built. So we want you to build on what we've done. We want you to build on that.
Say it again. Say it again.
Now, I just want to move on then.
No, say it again.
I wonder if I could get some water.
Say it again.
I don't want to move on then to the substantial part of my contribution. I'm thankful for my place here, and as I indicated, this would be my 7th budget debate, and that I would have contributed to. This would have been my 2nd one in this place, and I was fortunate enough to have 5 in the other place. Each time I understand the process a little better. And there are the budgets are very important things. Sometimes I wonder whether the country actually appreciates how important the budget exercise really is. I would say this: let's not have the budget exercise for 1 year, or let the budget exercise go beyond the 1st of July 1 year. And I am sure that every single Bahamian will feel the effects of not having this budget exercise. But they do a lot of things. They signal how well the country is doing. They signal how well we are doing economically. But it also gives the government an opportunity to chart the course forward. It gives the government an opportunity to put their money where they say their policies are. It also points to a story of the government. It shows us a picture of what the government is thinking, what their priorities are, what they think is important, what they think is not so important. As I articulated, it shows us the good, it shows us the bad, and it shows us the ugly. It speaks to, as I said, those priorities, and it speaks to your policies, and something similar to what our chaplain said this morning: you will put your treasure where your heart is. The budget is an opportunity to put your treasure where your heart is. It speaks to who will be helped, and it speaks to who will be harmed. It speaks to who will be brought relief, and it speaks to who will be given a tax burden. And make no mistake about it, this budget takes away from some Bahamians, and it increases taxes on others. Make no mistake about it, under this budget, regardless of how wonderful it is spoken about, the Bahamian public will pay more. And in my view, they will receive less from their government in some areas. I intend to examine the whole picture. In particular, some points that the government has not talked about. And to make the case that the budget is, in my view, filled with contradictions. It sometimes sends confusing messages and will not significantly advance us as a nation. And I want to make that point clear. In my view, there are significant contradictions in this budget. You speak on the one hand of wanting to do something, but you take away the money on the other hand. It sends confusing messages. You say your policy is to do one thing, but you take away money that will advance that very same policy. And as a result of those contradictions, and as a result of those confusing messages, we will not advance as a result of this budget. Some decisions send the wrong message. Some decisions are counterproductive. Some decisions do not go far enough to accomplish what we need to be accomplished. And Mr. Vice President, some decisions are plainly wrong. So we will examine and discuss the budget in that context. Mr. Vice President, let me first begin with crime. The Bahamas is in a crisis mode. In my view, the fear of crime is at an all-time high. We fear crime more than ever before. It affects all of us, and I, like Senator Hunt, and I'm sure other members on the other side as well, have been the victim of crime. It affects all of us, and we must all join in the fight. It has spilled over and threatens the nation's very livelihood, which is tourism. And I agree with the Minister of Tourism when he sounded the alarm. And he was quoted in the Nassau Guardian by saying, "I think it's fair to say that we are meddling with disaster." He said, "We are on course to destroy the reputation of our country if we don't find a way to cause for cease and desist." He said, "If we don't find a way to get Bahamians to appreciate the harm violence causes, we are going to have a rough future." He also says, "I believe that we have to do something today as opposed to tomorrow." I agree with those sentiments of the Honorable Minister. Mr. Vice President, just before election, there were PLP posters all across the Bahamas stating the number of murders under the FNM administration. Implied in that message was that crime was not controlled by the FNM government. In addition, urban renewal was touted as the answer. The FNM said it is not that simple. And we fought crime, we the FNM, fought crime with community policing, more police officers, more patrols, CCTV, electronic monitoring, more vehicles, more courts, appointing more judges, the Volunteer Bahamas program, stiffer penalties for guns and drugs. There was a gun amnesty program. The legislation was passed for the witness anonymity program to protect witnesses. We passed laws to regulate the cash for gold and the scrap metal and copper businesses. Even with all these measures, crime was still a serious problem. In listening to the government, they will hire more police. In fact, they will bring in Defense Force officers to assist the police. They will increase judges. They will increase courts. That sounds quite familiar and similar to me. But in listening to the Minister for National Security, and I listened to him and his contribution, and I will say, even after listening to the Attorney General and listening to Minister Bell, I want to say this clearly and slowly, I want to pledge my support in whatever way I can in this fight. This is a colossal problem, and it requires, as I believe someone quoted Cynthia Pratt. Senator Bazard quoted Cynthia Pratt. That it requires all hands on deck. The Minister for National Security, his comments signaled to me a move away from blaming the FNM and a move away from the belief that urban renewal will solve all our crime problems. It said to me that we need everybody, including those in the FNM. I want to also make a few observations on the comments made by the Attorney General. She believes, as did the FNM, that we need more courts and more judges. I wonder, though, is 20 judges and 10 simultaneous courts realistic? Unfortunately, I do not see the funding for the additional judges, courts, or additional attorney general's lawyers, jurors, to accommodate these goals in this budget. And you know, the budget is the budget. It articulates through funding those things you say you will do. Because if you are going to do things, you must pay for them. So if the government says that they will appoint 10 judges within this year, and they will have 20 judges and 10 additional courts, then it is reasonable to expect that you will see the funding for these things in the budget. Unfortunately, I do not see it. We see that in all this is a budget debate. It tells the country about what you are going to do and the funds that you are going to allocate for those things. So it's good to have goals. Goals are good. And I applaud the government for having those goals. But having the money and the political will is even better. But I will say this. I support any efforts which will result in the elimination of the trial backlog. Any efforts that will do it, I support it. And I sincerely hope that the government is able to accomplish it. Mr. Vice President, allow me to then move on to a few comments on education. This government promised, they touted it, they bragged about it, that they will double their investment in education. Now, I accept that money is not the only means of enhancing or investing in education, because they can be quick to tell you that. Money is not the only way to invest. Accept that. However, it is the most significant way, the most tangible way that we invest. Even the Bible says, money answereth all things. Say what you will. The government will be spending less money. Say what you will. The government will be spending less money on education, which I believe will reduce the government's ability to advance education of our young people. Let me say this, though. It is good news to see that funds are allocated for new schools, in particular for the special needs children. That's a good thing. One only needs to look at what the FNM did in Freeport with the Beacon School and see how this could work. But my question, though, Mr. Vice President, is this. Is $1 million enough for this school? Just ask that question. However, you know, the government, and I call this a slash and burn budget in some instances. Because, you know, if one looks at your history and agriculture, the slash and burn policy of a farmer was that once he planted on the land and the season was finished, they would slash and burn it to make it ready for a new set of investment or new set of planting. But they found that this was a bad thing to do because it destroyed, when in your slashing and burning, it destroyed the land. So, in my view, this is what is being done in this budget. You're slashing and burning some things in education that you say will then help you to advance education. But in your slash and burn policy, you are destroying some very good things. During this pivotal stage of recovery, the state, and when we look at the high state of youth unemployment and training, why would the government spend less money on things like the school quality assurance program? And this isn't dollars, a couple dollars. It's cut by $50,000. Why would you spend less on family island operations, on helping family islands in their schools, to the tune of $300,000? You like and are calling upon for the new agriculture school, which is good, but then when it comes to supplying schools with agriculture science supplies, you cut it in half. Now, I also heard the minister speak about the after-school program in the House, because one of my colleagues asked him, why would you cut the after-school program in half? You cut it by $292,000, the after-school program. His response was, well, we are paying the coaches out of another allocation. But when I looked at that allocation was only $100,000. So you still cut it by $92,000. Family Island secondary scholarships. You are cutting by $104,000. Now, we also spoke about BTVI. All of this is education. All of this is things that we are saying during this recovery stage that we need to make sure and invest in, and so that our educational system would be better. Well, why then would you cut the learning aids in BTVI? Why then would you cut the construction materials and electrical supplies that these persons use to be able to get their graduation and to learn? Why would you cut those things? Again, I say it sends conflicting messages. Why would you cut maintenance of the schools? Why would you cut the exams development project? And then why would you cut the grants to private schools? Now, I also heard the minister's response in the House with respect to this, and he said, well, there were some schools that closed down, some private schools that closed down, which is a legitimate, yes, that's true. But my argument would be, or my submission would be, that you use those funds to help those existing private schools, so that those existing private schools will then advance. That's what I would do, and that's what I believe this government should be doing. You also cut the establishment of the training institute. Now, I'm going to ask this question because I suppose the money was moved to someplace else, but I would like to know. And then you cut the contribution to the University of West Indies. And the question that I have is, if the contribution has been cut, will that mean you will have less scholarships for the University of West Indies? Well, let's talk about COB. You would cut a line item that is allocated for the training of COB teachers. COB teachers. You are cutting the monies to go to help to continue the training with COB teachers to the tune of $137,000. $137,000. Mr. Vice President, these are areas in education which, in my view, will have a direct effect on the education of our young people. These cuts in education should not be made, as they will not advance the Ministry of Education. The point is, we should not, when it comes to education, we should not be just trying to maintain what's going on. We should not, when it comes to education, be just trying to hold on to what we have. But every year, we should be seeking to advance the Ministry of Education. Every year, we should be seeking to send more funds to the Ministry of Education to assist our young people and to make sure that they are properly educated. If we truly believe that education is the key, then these are cuts that we cannot afford. If we truly believe that education is as important as we say it is, these are cuts we cannot afford. My colleague, Senator Hunt, spoke about youth. And I just also want to touch on some things as well. You are in the Ministry of Youth. Yes, you will be allocating funds to construct facilities in the Family Islands. I applaud you on that. You only need to look at the Free National Movement and look at the construction of the sports complex in Freeport, and you can take our example as a result of how you advance sports in a family island or in another island. Just look at that example of what we did. The sports complex, the track was paved, repaved. In addition to the sports complex, the softball complex was also completed. But I question, though, that even though you say you're going to construct facilities in the Family Islands, you take away monies to maintain your swimming pools in Nassau, your sports fields in Nassau. You take away monies to maintain the sports complex in Freeport. I don't understand that reasoning. Again, it is conflicting messages that you are sending. And I have a huge problem with this one, Mr. Vice President. This one I believe is wrong. We all celebrated with our professional athletes, some of whom benefited from the aid to student athletes. Our athletes have become the best in the world, to the point where they have obtained gold medals. They have proven themselves, and it cannot be disputed that they are a worthwhile investment. However, the government has decided that they will cut aid to student athletes who are on their way up. They will cut it to the tune of $105,000, more than half. That's not all. The National Endowment for Sports is cut. Could you believe that they're going to touch junior achievement? The junior achievement program? The junior achievement program, which is designed for high school students throughout this country to be mentored by businesses and to get assistance on how they become entrepreneurs, that's going to be cut. We're not going to take some money and help it or to increase it, but we're going to cut it. The National Youth Ambassadors Program is going to be cut. The Self-Starter Program, which was discussed, which are funds to young people, and when this program came into effect, I was very, very proud of this program. This program, which there are funds to young people to start their own businesses, and this is cut by $200,000. How many young people will be deprived from starting their own business? And given the rate of youth unemployment, I do not accept that this is a reasonable decision. When we look at youth unemployment, and if we say that we want to do something about youth unemployment, then in my view, if you want to advance this policy, then you put funds into that area that will advance that policy. You don't take the money away. Again, it sends confusing and conflicting messages. The Fresh Start program is cut. And you know, if we knew what this Fresh Start program was all about and why it came about, we wouldn't touch it. We would increase it. Because it was designed for those young people who found themselves on the wrong path, who could not get, who had graduated high school, but could not find employment because they found themselves on the wrong path. Something happened to them where they found themselves on the wrong path. That's hence the heading, Fresh Start. It gave those young people a fresh start. And what the government actually does is, the government takes those young people in, because there was a group that had just been taken in recently. They take those young people in, they train those young people for a period of time, and then they find jobs for those young people, and they then pay those young people for those jobs. It's amazing that we would cut that program, or that we would take funding from that program. These are valuable programs which have existed for years. Why would we cut these programs? Why we should be increasing the funds to these programs and not cutting them. Mr. Vice President, I ask, is this the actions of a caring and supportive government? I don't believe so. Then let me move to small businesses and make some comments about small businesses. This was mentioned by Senator Gomez, and I agree with him when he says about small businesses and what they mean to the economy. It is an unmistakable truth that small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of our economy. Large foreign investments come and they go, but the hundreds of Bahamian small businesses have no place to go because this is their home. The F&M believed in this, and that's why we gave small businesses an exemption on paying business license fees to spark new businesses, but this was stopped by the PLP. I can recall in this government's speech from the throne and the 2012 budget communication, it promised legislation to allow for the business, or to allow for the Bahamas Development Bank and BAIC. And I quote from the speech from the throne: to provide equity, credit guarantees, and marketing and accounting support for fledgling businesses. The necessary enabling legislation will be introduced by my government as a matter of priority. They said this a year ago. The necessary enabling legislation will be introduced by my government as a matter of priority. After more than a year, the government has not introduced this legislation. I guess it's no longer a priority. But let's look at what they have actually done with respect to small businesses and private enterprise. Let's examine what they have done in this budget for small businesses and for private enterprises. First, funding for the self-starter program, as I mentioned, has been reduced by $200,000. This represents 40 young people who could have started their own business within this year, but who will not be getting that assistance. This represents not just 40 young people, but it represents 40 businesses. Help to the economy and jobs, not to mention one less person on the unemployment line. The government's Jumpstart program, which gave grants to entrepreneurs to start and expand their business, actually appears to have been cut out altogether, as there is no allocation for this program. Mr. Vice President, I have said it before, if the government is serious about our economy, these programs should be expanded and not cut. This will only bring additional hardship and not the promised relief. Previously, $1.5 million was allocated, which helped 200 people start and expand their small business. This has apparently been stopped, reviewed, and canceled. Further, I was again surprised this government, instead of giving exemptions to encourage business development, it has actually increased the business license fees. Members bragged that raising taxes is an FNM policy. I remember the Minister for Financial Services when they spoke about the manufacturing bill and bringing back those manufacturing exemptions. Raising taxes, that's an FNM thing. And stated that raising taxes does not encourage growth, and the economy will be damaged as a result of you raising taxes. This is what they said. Well, Mr. Vice President, the private sector, not just the opposition, but the private sector has spoken out, including some of the very people who believed in them and supported them. There are some in the construction industry. And when I looked at the June 3rd edition of the Tribune, it had a heading, Construction Industry Taxed Over 150% business license fee increase. Officers from Cavalier Construction says that the increase was going to have an impact on employment and new hires in the construction industry. Dionisio D'Aguilera, in the June 10th edition of Tribune, suggested that the government, and this is his words, rethink its increased business license rates and plans to abolish all special categories. Says this disadvantages those with large turnovers but low margins. I move on. The June 3rd edition. Well, let's talk about one of the managers from Acupure, who said that the business license increase will mean that he pays 66% more, which will nullify the manufacturer exemption that this government recently granted. So he's saying, you gave me the manufacturer's exemption, which I think he was advocating for, and then you tax me now, which will cancel out the one that you gave me before.
Give it with one hand and take it with another.
And then you move to Sky Bahamas in the airline industry. And he says he doesn't believe that this government has no plan. One of the officers, I'm not going to call a name, one of the officers says that there's no plan in this budget to help businesses. And then you move to somebody in the tourism industry. If you move to somebody in the tourism industry, there's a spokesman from Majestic Tours who says that some businesses like us will either close down or sell out. And then in the oil industry, in Freeport Oil Holdings, FOCO, then ask whether...
I rise on a point of order, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Senator Gibson.
Mr. Vice President, to say that somebody said something somewhere is nothing less than a rumor. There are rules in here. When you are referring to what somebody said, and you refer to the person, the article, if you're referring to a newspaper article where the person said something publicly, call the person's name. Please, that's according to the rules. Otherwise, it's a rumor, it's his opinion. Well, he is saying it. Please, I'd ask him to obey the rules.
Duly noted. Senator Thompson.
I'm guided, Mr. Vice President. There was one last one that I was going to say, but that's fine. I think the point that I made, the point that I was saying I made. So I'm not going to go any further with those. As far as as far as I see, and the evidence that I have read and seen, the verdict is in. Sorry. I apologize, Madam Vice President. I didn't see it. Madam President, in my view, the verdict is in. The movers and the shakers of private enterprise do not believe the tax increase will help grow the economy. When we examine the fact that this government specifically said that they will create an atmosphere to spur the private sector to expand and grow the economy, this is what they said. Those who are in the private sector, across the board, in my view, are saying this will not work. So the very persons who they say they are relying on to spur and grow the economy, they are speaking out, and they are saying these business license increases that you are putting on us will not help us expand the economy. It will not help us do what you say we will do. This is only part of what are very heavy tax and fee increases in this budget. Every business will now have to pay more for importing items, either to use or to sell in their business, with the increase in the customs entry processing fee. Some having an increase from $10 to as much as $500 for every entry. Yes, every entry. I suggest that as a result of this fee increase, we, the Bahamian public, the ordinary struggling families who are already severely challenged, will have to pay more for grocery, construction material, clothing, and other retail items. Every Bahamian bringing in his first car, or his appliance for his new house, or furniture to develop his business or his house, must be prepared to pay more as a result of this government's fee increase. Madam President, while we continue to struggle in the construction industry, the government has, in my view, quietly increased building permit fees. Could you believe it? Building permit fees. We should be doing all we could to encourage private construction, not increasing their burden. The budget already says that this area needs assistance, or this area is not, I won't use the words not doing well, but this area could use assistance. While I accept that banks can pay higher taxes, and BEC and the Nassau Airport Company and the Bridge Authority can afford to pay business license fees, can the government guarantee that this cost will not be passed on to consumers and customers, causing the ordinary Bahamian to have to pay more at the end of the day? And then let's talk a little bit about the failed mortgage relief plan. I wonder, did the government expect that we would simply forget the failed mortgage relief plan? The PLP first promised their 10-point plan to bring relief to struggling homeowners. In September of 2012, the plan was changed, in my view, to a scaled-down version, which was supposed to help 1,500 people in need of assistance. Incredibly, after 8 months, that as of May of this year, it was announced that only 6 people have qualified for this plan. It's supposed to help 1,500, but only 6 after 8 months have qualified. What makes matters worse is I expected, and across the board, I believe the Prime Minister and the Minister for State for Finance has indicated that this plan needs work, needs additional work, that they are not happy with the results of the plan. What makes matters worse is I expected to hear plans of a revamped plan that would bring the promised relief. However, there was no mention of this plan in the Prime Minister's statement. I call on the government to do what they promised. Do what you said you would do. Every month brings more debt, more stress, and one step closer to those persons losing their homes. They need your help, and they need your help more now than ever before. Madam President, the government must correct the deficiencies.
Point of order. Madam President, I know the Honorable Senator may not mean to mislead the Senate, but he may not have heard the announcement that the mortgage plan as it stands is still being used in effect, and that he is going back to the banks and asking to use the appeals process. So it's wrong to say that the plan has been tossed aside and there's no plan in place to help those that are required to help.
Madam President, I don't know if I said the plan was tossed aside, and I don't know if I said that the plan, that there is no plan in place. What I said was that the government must correct the deficiencies in its plan. And I still say that the government, and I'm glad that if there is some actions to help this plan and to get more people on the plan, I support that. I support that. But this is what, and I would wish the government to consider this. We need a mortgage relief plan specifically designed to help employed homeowner. The government could create a job training component to this relief plan, providing some income and benefit created by the FM to 26 weeks for homeowners who are in distress. And they could actually pass and bring into force the legislation to protect distressed homeowners. Unfortunately, the government continues to, or this bill is continued to be delayed in the House at the committee stage. Let me then move on to the fire station in Grand Bahama. Madam President, the island of Grand Bahama has suffered for years with bushfires, challenges with equipment and trucks for our firefighters. Let me first say that I am pleased to hear that Grand Bahama will be receiving the much-needed assistance with 2 fire trucks. That is good. The FNM promised and allocated funds for the fire station. The PLP in the last year's budget promised and again allocated the funding for the fire station in Grand Bahama. There was an allocated line item for it. Again, encouraging. It is therefore most disturbing when I search the capital budget for the funding for the continuation of this most important project, I could not find the allocation for the Grand Bahama Fire Station. It would appear that no funds have been allocated for it. In light of the recent fire tragedies, such as the
Madam President, just to assist my learned friend, I'm sure that he would have heard, hope he would have heard, if he did not tell him, Mr. Systems. I'm sure he doesn't want the public to be misinformed by what he said, but that is in those capital works, as you know from your involvement before, is in the budget of the Ministry of Works.
Thank you, and I will look for that allocation. I know that it was in last year's budget in the capital works, and I didn't see it. And I will look for it to see that if it's there, and if it's not there, then I will ask the question during the committee stage. So, and I did thank you for the new fire stations. New fire engines. That is much needed in Grand Bahamas. That's not a political thing. I mean, that is a real need. That's when you look at the things that Grand Bahamians have suffered when it comes to fire recently, that is a much needed assistance. Let me then move on to the environment. Madam President, the Ministry of Environment has also been affected by several cuts, which will have negative effects on, in my view, and have severe consequences. In the Department of Environmental Health Services, the government has cut the money for training, and the government has cut monies for the administration in the Freeport office. An entire $1.4 million for maintenance contractors, leaving it now to $4,500. Why such a severe cut? And what effect will this have on keeping our environment clean and maintaining a healthy, clean environment? There has also appeared to be a cut of $160,000 from the Family Island operations. Again, we will be seeking answers with respect to these cuts. The Bahamas must move towards reducing our energy costs. As a nation, this is a policy that should be across the board. It should, whether the PLB is in office or whether the FNM is in office, this should be a goal that all governments have. We must change the way we do things, from the kind of light bulbs we use to the kind of cars we drive. The time is now to educate, to encourage, and to make those changes. We can now. We cannot afford to wait any longer. The government must be the driving force, not for ourselves, but for our children and for their future. This government, unfortunately, has cut the funds allocated to the energy-efficient residential lighting program. The FNM developed an energy policy with a view and a vision to reduce energy consumption by 30% and have 30% of its energy met by a renewable source by 2030. The FNM began to implement its policy by starting the energy-efficient residential lighting program. This government has decided that instead of expanding it, or even maintaining the program as to what it is, it will reduce it. Madam President, you can't just talk about reducing energy costs. But when you have the real opportunity to make a positive change, then you cut the funding for the program. Madam President, the minister also made a number of comments on appointing, and this is the Minister of Housing and Environment, also made a number of comments on appointing a national energy task force who has to advise and report on how the Bahamas can best meet its energy needs. What the minister did not say is that this task force will benefit greatly from the National Energy Policy Committee, which was appointed by the FNM cabinet, and who has already reported back in 2008. and that the FNM has already begun implementing some of its recommendations. Governments are continuous. So I expect that this new task force will use and will build on the efforts made by the previous government. The government has also decided to change, and this was also mentioned by Senator Gomez, the government has decided to change government policy on the duty of vehicles. Now, while I am thankful that they did not increase the customs duty on vehicles, they have reverted back to the policy of charging duty on value rather than on engine size. Madam President, while I admit the rate was high, the policy, I believe, was right. It encouraged persons to buy environmentally friendly, smaller size cars, especially for a place like New Providence. This was a good energy policy. Yes, inexpensive cars will pay less duty, but inexpensive, small, new cars will pay more. It does not send the right environmental message. It does not send the right environmental message. And then let's talk about garbage collection for a while. Madam President, the Bahamas must solve its problem with collecting our garbage in a timely manner. The government was criticized by the Minister of Housing in last year's budget, and this is what the Minister of Housing promised to do in last year's budget, and I want to quote his budget statement. He said, simultaneously, we will repair some of the trucks that can be fixed, and also seek to buy additional garbage trucks to increase the Department of Environmental Health Services' ability to properly serve our communities. However, Mr. Speaker, unlike the former government, and he said unlike the former government, we will purchase garbage trucks that are suited to the Bahamian climate. Well, Madam President, I therefore listened with great anticipation to see how many new trucks they bought this year. You know how many they bought this year? 0. I also looked to see how many new trucks were allocated to be bought in this next year. They said, well, okay, they had a year, they couldn't buy them this year, but I'm sure it's important to the minister, it's important to this government. They will allocate money in this year's budget to have trucks for garbage collection. I also looked to see how many were in next year's budget. And do you know how many trucks were allocated for in that budget? 0 trucks. Now, I do commend the minister for reducing the amount which government spends on private contracts. I do commend him for that. He made a concerted effort that you were paying a large amount for private contractors to collect garbage, and he renegotiated, and it was reduced, and I do commend him for saving the taxpayers' money with respect to that. But I believe, having gained some experience, I think he has come or will come to the conclusion that the FNM has. And that is, eventually the government must move away from the business of collecting garbage and put it in the hands, and privatize it and completely put it in the hands of private companies. It can work. It is possible to have a private company collect your garbage and do it in an efficient manner. Just look at Freeport. Freeport, for years, a private company has been collecting garbage, and it does it in what I would call a timely and most efficient way. In fact, if you don't have your garbage out there, if they can pick up your garbage on a Wednesday, and you don't have your garbage out there by 6 a.m. on Wednesday, you're going to have to wait until the next day. But they are very efficient. And I will say this as well, because I'm going to get there. Eventually, we will have to realize that you are going to have to pay a fee every month in order to have your garbage collected. It is going to have to be done, because in my view, the government cannot continue on a yearly basis to continue to take on the burden of collecting the garbage without asking the public to pay a fee with respect to collecting the garbage. And I don't believe that paying a fee of $10 or $12 a month is a large fee to be able. We may pay about $20 a month in order to have your garbage collected on a timely manner. And if it's done in New Providence, it could probably be done at a cheaper rate because you have more volume in New Providence. So I think the government is going to have to eventually begin to move in that direction. And if they do, I would support a move in that direction. The housing program, and I'm sure that Senator Storr is very interested in the comments in respect to the housing program. The government has promised that within the 5-year term, through sale of lots and construction of homes, to provide 1,300 homes for Bahamians. With the recent loan from National Insurance, they seek to have completed in 12 months 125 homes. So at the end of the second year, almost half of their 5-year term, if they are successful, they would have completed 125 out of the 1,300 homes. Now, I did not do well in maths, but you are not on the right road if you want to complete your 1,300 homes. Something else would need to be done. Let's examine what the minister said in last year's budget communication. So let's examine what the minister said in last year's communication. He promised, and the minister promised some new things in last year's budget. He was the new minister, and he gave his what his agenda was, and he made some new promises. He first said that he would, and that his government would decrease the cost of housing. Let's stop right there. They will decrease the cost of housing. Well, let's take a moment and examine this one. In this budget, what they have done is increase the amount that you will pay for a building permit. Increase the fees that you will pay to import building materials. Increase the amount that most contractors will pay for business licenses. That does not seem to me to be on the same direction to decrease the cost of housing. Again, it sends conflicting messages. You cannot, on the one hand, say you're going to decrease the cost to build a house, but then on the other hand, you increase building permits, increase the amount that you can pay to import material, and then increase the construction company's business license. The two do not fit. The minister has also committed to, and I quote, accomplish some of its housing goals with the assistance of the private sector, specifically private developers and financiers. This is actually very encouraging because it protects the already cash-strapped mortgage corporation, but also continues the housing program. I thought we would have heard about some program or some joint venture between the Department of Housing and private banks, or a private land developer, or private construction companies who will be able to provide in-house financing. But all we hear is another loan to the mortgage corporation, who is already struggling financially. Madam President, what the department should be doing is negotiating with banks, development companies, contractors, those persons who can provide financing separate and apart from the mortgage corporation, but on the same terms as the mortgage corporation will provide. Madam President, the minister and I agree that it is absolutely unacceptable to have to spend millions of dollars repairing houses for incompetent contractors and inspectors. I do agree that we need additional inspectors, and I saw the comment that there will be additional inspectors. But we must go even further. If we are truly to bring change to the Department of Housing, I had hoped that the minister would have taken the opportunity to implement some of the recommendations in the Crown Agent's Value for Money report. Specific recommendations were made with respect to changing the arrangements for contractors, such as what they were paid, how many houses are allocated to them, and how the contracts are handed out. All of this must change. And if we truly want to give Bahamians value for money, we must tackle the whole problem. The report also said we should be moving from the government financing model to a more private sector approach. We should be encouraging contractors to seek private means to construct the houses, and the government then provides service lots. It also suggested how these houses would be allocated, and that they should be allocated in significant amounts so that persons would be able to get value for their money. The government's plan, unfortunately, does not fully address the concerns in the report and seems destined to repeat the huge sums of wasted public funds. Madam President, I conclude, though, on a positive note. This year marks our 40th anniversary of independence. It is a special year. It provides us with an opportunity to reflect on where we have come from as a nation. God has truly brought us from a mighty long way. And the song, says that I may not be who or where I want to be, but I thank God that I'm not where I used to be. So, despite our challenges, we still live in, and I'm sure that all senators would agree on this one, despite our challenges, despite our disagreements, we still all live in the best little country in the world. And I appreciate those things that make us uniquely Bahamian. Our food, our music, our faith, our strength, our peacefulness, our seas and our sand, and yes, even our dialect. And seeing the Vice Chancellor for University of Buckingham this morning, I recall one moment in my life that I will never forget, and I believe it emphasized to me at that point in my life how important being a Bahamian was to me. It was when I had attended the University of Buckingham for the first time, and I had left the country for about 6 months, and that was the longest time that I was away from the country. And living in England, as some of you have already experienced, you hear all kinds of different dialects and languages and speeches and so on. And I recall coming back home during Christmas time and flying back into the Miami International Airport. And if you remember the Miami International Airport, you walk to the section where the Bahamas Air section was. I had been gone for 6 months. And at that time, it was before 9/11, so you knew it was the Bahamas Air section simply by seeing all of the boxes that was parked outside that area. But I remember coming to that section and not having heard the dialect for a long time, having a gentleman approach me and say to me, boss, you could change 100. And I will tell you no lie, I honestly wanted to hug that fella just simply because I missed the way that we as Bahamians spoke. But it is a unique country, and I am proud to be a part of this country. Deeply proud to be a part of this country. This is the only country we have, and we must own it. Those of us who can, and those of us who have been given the opportunity and the responsibility, we must take care of our country for the next 40 years. We must make sure that the labor that those persons who have gone during these first 4 years does not go in vain. But we must make sure that we take up the mantle and continue to push this country forward. I believe that we have not seen yet the best years of this country. Our best is yet to come, and the latter will be greater. I end then, Madam President, by quoting the words of a song that was written by Mikhail Nesbitt, Faye Thompson, and Kevin Tomlinson. A song that I can recall the first time I heard this song. It was at the local government convention or local government convention in Grand Bahama when the Grand Bahama Youth Choir sang this song in a very moving way. And the words of the song, Madam President, go this way. It says that the time has come for us to celebrate our land, giving thanks to God for this, our home. From north to south, east to west, His beauty shines throughout. Standing tall, filled with pride, firm in our faith, God will guide, never letting go of our dream. It says, forward marching, on upward goals we've won. Onward we'll press on, together as one. Despite the challenges we face, the hurdles we have crossed, together with unlimited hearts we overcame. God has been a faithful guide. Let's keep Him by our side. Standing tall, filled with pride, firm in our faith that God will guide. It says, forward, marching on, upward goals we've won. Onward, we'll press on, together as one. Madam President, we support the budget.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senator Thompson. The chair now recognizes the Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, One of the things, with your permission, I must observe about the debate in the Senate. There are fewer people, admittedly, in the Senate than there are in that other place. It took over 2 weeks, I think it was, for that debate. And I was speaking about it with someone the other day. And here we are, Madam President, within 2 days,
No interruptions.
having a debate with no acrimony at all, no acrimony at all. And I do believe, Madam President, that everybody in this place meant all that they said. And I believe that everybody in this place is a patriot. And everybody loves the Bahamas just as much. Each of us loves the Bahamas as much as the other. So I do, Madam President, want to thank you for your leadership, and the Vice President for, when he sat in the chair as well, for his leadership, and thank all of my colleagues for a debate. I would call it, I don't know whether they still do précis in schools these days, but it's a précis, and I hope that the public benefited well from it, of the longer story that went on in the other place. Both important, equally important. And maybe. I want to say, though, Madam President, as I wrap up, a budget, as enunciated in the budget communication, as enunciated in the Prime Minister's visionary statement that I tabled yesterday, as illustrated in detail in this draft estimates of revenue and expenditure, all upon which the foundation is a charter for governance. This book, the Bahamian people elected this party on, the Progressive Liberal Party, and as summarized in this book, Madam President. That's what it's all about. And Madam President, I want to just say that when the Bahamian people are looking at whether or not the opposition supports this plan, as enunciated, how we're going to carry it out here, they want to hear, they did hear the Prime Minister say in the other place, that we should expect the opposition to oppose, but we should not be deterred from carrying out the people's business. And we will not, Madam President, be deterred from carrying out the people's business. I note that Senator Bostwick equally will not be deterred from carrying out the people's business. In fact, he made it his business, and I want to single him out and compliment him for it, of making suggestions that you, Madam President, publicly in this place, on the record for posterity, said to him that you hope that entrepreneurs will avail themselves of the excellent suggestions that came from the mouth, pearls of wisdom, from the mouth of that young man. Don't mind that gray beard. Wisdom. It's a young man. And Madam President, Senator Hunt said, by their fruit, you will know them. By their fruit, you will know them. So who is it that is complaining about this plan to improve the lives of Bahamians? Who is it that's complaining about it? Let me ask you, give you a few examples, Madam President. And I believe, Madam President, that for those who were complaining, you would not have heard one complaint out of those lips. Any of them, would I put examples on the table? Who are they, Madam President? The people who taxed Bibles, taxed school books, taxed baby diapers, cut subventions to charities, cut subventions to schools.
That's right. That's right.
Refused to renew, when they were begged to do so, the first home exemption for new homeowners, while they presided over record 4 years increase in crime, sent policeman home
That's right.
with 48 hours notice. How many
Just a
people were sent home? Just
point of
finish my
order.
sentence. Just finish my sentence. I will yield. How many people?
Countless.
No, how many people were sent with 48 hours notice?
Too much. I can't. It was just too much.
I don't quote a number, but there's almost 70, I think. There's 48 hours notice. I haven't finished my list yet, but I will yield. Is it a point of order?
Point of order, Madam President. I believe I heard the Attorney General indicate that the Free National Movement refused to extend the first-time homeowners exemption. That's not so. It was extended under the Free National Movement, and I believe the Learned Attorney General is aware that it was extended.
Now, Madam President, I'm old enough to be able to say what I want to say, as long as it's true. And I'm old enough to admit that sometimes I'm at the age where sometimes I have memory lapses. But Madam President, my memory is not that bad. I remember when the first homeowners, when they became the government in 2007, in December, the first homeowners was about to expire. The opposition, then Progressive Liberal Party, begged them to extend the first homeowners exemption. They did not do so. It lapsed. Do you know how many people? Do you know how many people were impacted by that decision, Madam President? There were thousands of Bahamians. Ask the bankers. Senator Gomez can vouch for this as a finance man.
I can tell you. I was in the.
That there were you know about it yourself,
right.
Senator Bell.
Poor people struggling
There were
to
many people who were in the middle of negotiating their new homes, and because of that mean-spiritedness, that's all I can call it, of these same people, by their fruit, they were not able to obtain a first home. It was many months later, and by then, those people who had already expended money on the cost could not get it back. It was not necessary, Madam President. It didn't have to be that way. May I continue, Madam President? With your leave. Policemen sent home. Policemen who had served with distinction. Up to the deputy commissioner. You've given 48 hours notice, and you know something? Even with, it was bad enough. No blemish on your record. For deputy commissioner, some people were 17, 20 years. They were told within 24 hours, bring your uniform, bring your weapon, bring your car. I mean, it was just disgusting. Disgusting. Presided over record numbers of people out on bail. Just by your fruit, you know. Record murder rates. Record death. Record cost overruns. Record over $100 million. Record, one project, exactly, on one project. And they will talk about family and friends. I would invite some people to do an analysis of who got the doggone contracts on that $100 million cost overrun so you can know about family and friends. How much that sand was on the beach?
$5 million.
$3.5 million. Now check it out. Check it out who friend that is. If you put it that way. Where whose boat was left there? Please. And I didn't hear a word, not a peep from any of them on the other side. Left this country in such bad condition, $1 billion had to be borrowed to pay debts that they incurred, so that we could put this country back on the right track. And there's just one more thing, Madam President. It wouldn't be those things were bad enough. I will never forget the cost of the road project to Bahamian entrepreneurs whose businesses were shut down, built by families over years, generations, Madam President, that sent children to school, and now shut down. The result of that, Madam President, many of them not yet open. The result of that, Madam President, and these same policies, was that many homes were lost. You all remember the supplement in the paper?
Yes.
About this thick of homes that were being advertised. And why? Why? The same wholehearted policies. By your fruit, Madam President, you shall know them. These are the people who would like to ask us, why didn't we do certain things? Why don't we do certain things? This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Building a better Bahamas. And it is coming during a very propitious time. The 40th anniversary of our independence, when they're going to the next generation. This is what the Bahamians want. And guess what? Moody's have this wonderful compliment for us as well. And today, Madam President, I don't know whether anybody heard it at lunchtime, to show you the condition that they left this country. And I'm looking for that statement by Dr. Bernard Nordage. Madam President, so do you mind I read it into the record? So important. This is this shows how what we had to rescue this country from. This is the conditions that the F&M left the country in. They talk about come in here talking. This is a statement read this morning by Dr. Bernard Nordage, Minister of National Security, on the TIPS designation, trafficking in persons designation. This morning, we are pleased to announce, he read it this morning, that the United States government has removed from Tier 2 watch status, Tier 2 watch, that's where we were, to Tier 2 status, that's up. We were moved up. We were not downgraded. Pursuant to the provisions of the applicable legislation on trafficking in persons, the announcement was made by John Kerry, the U.S. Secretary of State in Washington. He goes on to say that we welcome this development as the right decision by the government of the United States. We use this opportunity to remind the public. He goes on to talk about trafficking in persons. He talked about the fact that it's modern-day slavery. He clarifies a mistake that was made by the Tribune, and I hope that they will correct it, in saying that we have been classified by the State Department as a Tier 2 watch list country for the third consecutive year. That is simply not true. And he goes on to explain the stages. This is very important. The stages are these: Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 2 watch, and Tier 3. That's 4. 1, 2, 2, 2 watch. I can't even count myself. 1, 2, 2 watch, and 3, 4. We were at, if you stay on 2 watch 2 years consecutively, the third year, you go down. You're automatically downgraded. Tier 3 carries sanctions, possible sanctions, that would cause you to lose international funding. So, Madam President, and through you to colleagues, do you know how many international agencies fund this country? You know what that would have meant?
That was a great.
That was a crisis if you ever saw one, for true. And so what happened, Madam President, is that through the efforts, the focused effort, led, of course, by our Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and myself through the Ministry of the Attorney General, the Office of the Attorney General, and many other partners assisting us, NGOs such as the Red Cross, the Crisis Center, the IMO, the International Migrant Organization, Madam President, and cooperation with some of our international partners, including the United States State Department and the Embassy. We were not downgraded. In fact, we moved up 1, Madam President. As he said, as the minister also said, this TIP announcement is another objective measurement that the government is taking the right decisions in the fight against crime and the administration of justice. This is acknowledged by the Secretary of State. And by the way, Madam President, earlier this year, we avoided a downgrade by Lyndon Pending International Airport, the gateway to our country by the FAA. That's the mess they left the country in. And you heard the Moody's comment, we have pulled the economy from the fiscal cliff. And agencies with no axe to grind, no interest, have commended the fiscal policies of this government. That's not a criticism, that's a compliment. That's saying Bahamas, led by Perry, Gladstone, Christie, you're doing something right. Keep up the good work. You're moving in the right direction. Who's saying it? International partners. Imagine Bahamians who can't even acknowledge that it's important to avoid a downgrade of LPIA. It's important to avoid a tier 3 downgrade on TIP. Not a word. Not a word. By your fruit you shall know them. Madam President, we have to understand as well that when we look at this budget, that the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State for Finance have both pointed out, we believe, and our international consultants also believe, and partners have believed, that it is time, this is the 40th year of our independence, to analyze our system and to see whether the country can be even better served by certain amendments and restructuring the way that we raise revenue, Madam President. And fundamental, Madam President, to all of this, you know, is do we believe that that people all over the Bahamas are Bahamians, equal Bahamians? You know, that means in an archipelago, this is not a contiguous landmass, you know. We can't just build one school or one hospital and say, well, all of us could go to that hospital. We have to replicate medical facilities on all islands where there is a population. Replicate schools on all islands, airports, roads, and how we can pay for it, Madam President. We have to raise revenue. We have to raise revenue, and to do so fairly in a modern and accepted 21st century manner. And that, Madam President, that, colleagues, is what we're doing when we're debating this budget and these bills. That's what we're doing. How, in a fair and equitable way, are we going to assure that Bahamians all over the Bahamas feel like we're equal? Let me raise the flag when we go. Madam President, you remember that flag went up for the first time? Some of you are not old enough to remember. Please go. Anybody within the sound of my voice, make sure and go to the flag raising ceremony. That is a memory you will tell your children about and your grandchildren, if God allows you, your great-grandchildren, if you could remember. That's what this is all about. When we raise that flag, we are all saying we are equal. If you live in, this is truly one Bahamas, if you live in Inagua, your runway should be able to take airplanes. Your school should have computers in it. Your administrator's office, you should be able to go there if you don't have your own access to internet and have your internet access. All over the Bahamas, we want the same things, and we want our children to be exposed to the same things and have the same opportunities. That's what this is about, Madam President. Madam President, let's just do a quick snapshot of what this budget is all about. Let's look at the Ministry of Tourism. We heard the Minister of Tourism speak about arrivals up, the efforts that are being made to increase airlift from South America, from the Far East and the Middle East, the efforts being made in sports, culture, medical, and religious tourism, the efforts being made to let people experience the different islands in their unique forms, Madam President. I say that because Madam President believes all that I'm saying. Each island in the Bahamas is different. Don't get her talking about it. Every island in the Bahamas is different. The Minister for Social Services, speaking about the assistance that the IDB is giving us to help us revamp how we give social assistance. He's changing it. Madam President, we are changing it. On gender affairs, ensuring that we comport with this international norms, yet within our Constitution and our cultural norms. Did you hear her speak about the changes that have been made to the William A. Pratt Center, the Simpson Pratt Center? Hard-working minister, Madam President.
Amen.
The Minister of Transport. You heard our own Senator, I'll call you Cheryl Major, Cheryl Bazard. Our own Senator Cheryl Bazard here this morning speak about how for the first time the cruise ships have been invited to come and sit down with the board and talk about the things that concern them. First time she said it happened, right here in this place. How the Minister of Transport, I just said it, avoided LPI having a FAA downgrade, and we have an ICAO audit coming up later this year. Madam President and colleagues, I worked with the Minister of Transport on this particular matter, the FAA audit. And the Prime Minister said it in the other place. The Prime Minister warned her, you don't have to get so personal. You can recognize that personally involved, recognize that these things could be beyond your control. 2 audits were missed under that administration. By their fruits you shall know them. This is a person who almost lost our pre-clearance. This is a person who rolled up her sleeves and determined, worked extremely hard. It was a pleasure working with her, Madam President, to see that the gateway to our country, that supports the lifeblood of our country, was not downgraded. If that's not a hard-working minister, you tell me who is. Madam President, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Works, you heard him speak about the mess that he found and that he had to clean up with the road project in New Providence, with the capital works that have to be done in our family islands. And you heard the announcements that were made about what will be happening in this budget all across the Bahamas, Madam President. A hard-working Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Works. The Minister of National Security and the Minister of State in the Ministry of National Security. We can say, Madam President, that we have a crime plan. And it is working. I gave the evidence. Senator Bell gave the evidence. And, Madam President, I want to say how grateful I am to those on the other side for supporting the plan and extending their hand, recognizing that it is a very important plan, even when they uttered words of skepticism. But let me say here today, Madam President, the Right Honorable Perry Gladstone Christie, that's the Prime Minister, said that he wanted to make sure that everybody understood, persons, Bahamians and everybody in our borders, this day of internet that's gone all over the world, that this government, the Progressive Liberal Party led by Perry Gladstone Christie, has an unflinching commitment. You know what unflinching commitment is? To make sure that everybody understands our determination, Madam President, to, and this is my paraphrasing, to break the back of crime. It's a turbocharged plan. You know what a turbocharged plan means? It's being stepped up big time. And people, the PM is saying, listen, our plan is working, but people aren't feeling it sufficiently. We're going to turbocharge that because we want the Bahamians to understand that we hear them, we feel their pain, and we are a committed, unflinching commitment, Madam President, unflinching commitment. The Royal Bahamas Police Force. This budget made significant allocations and increasing personnel. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force, over $200 million being allocated to upgrade the facilities, to get equipment and personnel. That's half of that. Half of the road. That's half of that road. Half of that road project to pay for that. Something. The ministry, the crime plan, led by the Minister of National Security and the Minister of State, working, Madam President, for Bahamians. The Minister of Education. Just let me just touch on the work of this hard-working minister, taking the College of the Bahamas to university status. It is on its way.
Amen. It's coming.
It's on its way.
Bring it on.
You know, when I heard these people say on the other side, the ones who tax school books and decrease the subvention for schools, when I heard them say we weren't ready for university status, you know what it reminded me of, Madam President? Independence, but not yet.
Oh, yes.
Y'all ain't
Yes,
ready to be
yes,
independent. 40 years later, isn't it amazing? Not yet. Not yet. Anyway, we can soon be a university in the Bahamas.
That's right. Coming.
Well, they said, you know what else they said? Y'all remember? No national insurance. Remember Sir Clifford Doyle said that he had people who lived.
Yes.
He lived to have people thank him for national insurance after threatening him. You remember that?
Yes.
When we were having the defense force, the very same defense force that they let run down. Senator Smith said it, you know. He said when the PLP is in power, you see growth, and you remember the statistics he gave yesterday that have not yet. I listened to anybody to refute, to say numbers don't mean anything. That didn't happen. He laid it out well. Financial services.
Yeah.
May I say Ryan a lion?
Right. That's right.
That be parliamentary language. A leader. The Bahamas is seen as a leader in the region.
That's right.
We are the CARICOM spokesperson on the WTO, EPA, and on financial services. And by the way, at the moment, we are the vice chair of the CF, Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. And this November, when they are in the Bahamas, in Freeport, Grand Bahama, thanks to the Minister of Tourism and the Prime Minister's agreement, guess who's taking the chair?
Who?
The Bahamas. The Bahamas. I got to the hairdresser that day. CF, chair. Financial services. All under the PLP, you know. Leader. People understand the spirit of the Prime Minister. They said there was nobody. Let me tell you a story, Madam President. I'm a historian. It's the truth. We hadn't got in mind anybody for the Vice President. When I went to the first meeting, they're always so happy, you know, in the Caribbean and the Bahamas is represented again by the Progressive Liberal Party. It was under Sir Lyndon's leadership, but equally so under Perry Gladstone Christie's leadership. And they said, they laid out a vision for what could happen to financial services in the region because of the visionary support of the Bahamas for financial services, and most especially when the PLP is the government, Madam President. And we're going to see some serious changes. And Madam President, as a former, I say it all the time, as a former Minister of Financial Services, this is we call it the second pillar of our economy. Madam President, I'm not a betting woman. 40 years away from here, financial services, if it's not agriculture, it'll be financial services, between the two of them. Tourism is going to support them. Those two are going to turn this country around. And this government right now, this same plan, this same statement has laid the basis for that to happen. Mark my words. Mark my words. We don't have any commitment to youth. You all heard that? The family island sporting facilities. But the Prime Minister said right now, spots are being identified. Enthusiastic, committed Minister Danny Johnson has already identified some spots, and others are being identified, so that our children, we all go to the Bahamas. Not only NASA should have an internationally accepted track all over the Bahamas, so that our children can train on it. And guess what? We're not just looking for little boats. The boat is a good runner. He wants some Shawnees, more Shawnees, and the Vern Eves, and plenty of Bahamians to finish winning gold medals. We don't need to look at Jamaica. We got people right here for our children to emulate. And we're going to make sure that in all those family islands, the facilities can be right there, so they can train right there. And when they come to National Stadium, we will understand, all of us Bahamians, what we really have in this country. That's what's in this plan. Don't tell me we're not committed to our youth. Please. Did you hear the Prime Minister speak about the home that's being built for the children with special needs?
That's right.
Not just a home, a facility, Madam President. You see Senator Sawyer speak with emotion about when the Prime Minister was in Abaco recently for that graduation. You see the pictures. I saw a painting.
Every child counts. I know that.
At the PM's office last night, I saw a painting that was painted by one of the children in Abaco. I thought it was an Amos Ferguson painting. I thought it was an Amos Ferguson painting, Madam President. I kid you not. And the Prime Minister is committed to every Bahamian, all of our children, bringing to national development their talents. And for parents of those children to be able to feel that their government cares about them and their children. And that's the truth. It's the truth. It's extremely important. Don't care about young people, for heaven's sake. The Minister of Social Services said that we are about to sign the Disabilities Convention and bring the Disability Act. We, Madam President, did the Prime Minister in his speech on Tuesday spoke about the agricultural, and I try to get the right name for it, in Andros. The Agriculture and Marine Institute that will be in Andros. Madam President, that Agriculture and Marine Institute, and he gave I really, really urge people to please read it, the Prime Minister's contribution, will transform the Bahamas, Madam President, and bring about food security. That means that we will feed ourselves. That's in the plan, Madam President. And right here, we're starting it out. We're starting on it. The Prime Minister's presentation spells it out. It says that we expect to have, it's going to start this year, This year starting. 10 million in annual gross revenue, annually a net cash balance. This is something that amazed me when I came to Cabinet to make the presentation.
Yes, that's right.
A net cash balance after debt servicing of $2.34 million.
Yes.
And, Madam President, it will completely repay the initial investment sum with 5% interest at the end of the first 5 years of the project.
Yes.
Now, what an amazing investment that is? We paid with 5% interest in 5 years, while generating annually a net cash balance of $2.34 million. Madam President, health, as one of the earlier speakers said, we really can't continue to have a situation where persons are having cookouts, pay for medical expenses in the circumstances of catastrophic illnesses. That is why the Minister of Health has said, Exuma, Eleuthero, and Bahama hospitals being built. The facility at Princess Margaret, as we speak, being improved, Madam President, and national health insurance on the way. That's what this is all about, Madam President.
Yes.
That's what this is all about. Madam President, I could go, before they get to the questions and the heads, I was thinking I could go head by head and talk about every agency and every department. I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to give a little taste of how serious we are about carrying out this vision, Madam President. Let there be no doubt about the Prime Minister's unflinching commitment to carry out this plan. Unflinching commitment. And we're not going to be distracted by people who tax the Bible, put tax on school books and put people's businesses, close down generation family businesses. Madam President, in supporting the budget, the second reading in committal of the budget, which was the bill, appropriation bill. I want to just say, Madam President, that we are led, we are so fortunate at this time in our national development to be led by a man who is focused, Madam President, a visionary and compassionate leader, Madam President. I just want to for a minute go back to the Abaco example, and there are so many. He constantly speaks about his commitment to our young people having a second chance. We're not casting our young people on a heap anywhere. We're doing everything we can, and that is why the Urban Renewal Project is so important, Madam President. And we want to congratulate and thank the former Deputy Prime Minister, Cynthia Mother Pratt, and the former Minister of Youth, and many other ministries as well, the Honorable Algernon Allen. Did you see them yesterday?
Yes. Yeah.
On the TV?
Oh, yeah.
Going to a walkabout and hearing Mother Pratt speak?
Yes.
I must say, Madam President, you know what really made me feel good? To see the Honorable Algernon Allen trying to keep up with Mother Pratt. I haven't had a chance to speak to him yet. But the woman that made me feel good, she was moving and he was trying to keep up. That's the kind of energy. You know, Vermont, the kind of energy that they both are bringing to urban renewal, which works. It is working. And you know something, Madam President? Those on the other side can grumble about their office space and the stipend we pay them and whatever else we support them with. They are giving sacrificially to build this country.
That's right.
So I wanted to cringe at people who would tax the Bible, would grudge them having an office space to sit in, so that we could institutionalize urban renewal. Really, please. Thank you, Mother Pratt. Thank you, the Honorable Algernon Allen, for all that you're doing, you continue to do sacrificially in nation building. Let's go back to the Prime Minister so I can wrap up. Madam President, how many, when you'll remember the 5 years before, did you ever feel like you were part of a team or part of one country?
No.
I don't want to ask those on the other side whether they ever felt like they were on a team, because I don't want, it would be a rhetorical question. I don't think they could truly answer it. But I can tell you on this side, I could go through every minister around the cabinet table, and they'll be able to tell you how they run their ministry. And they are supported by a leader who wants to see every single cabinet minister succeed.
That's right.
And we are all properly supported. And look, the same way that I can look around this table and I can see people, this historic room, Madam President, and I see people of all ages and shades and from all islands in this country, and we are all contributing to this debate here. That's the way that the Prime Minister Perry Christie leads. Everybody is welcome to come to the table, and that is why we collaborate.
That's right.
That is why we consult. We want the Haitians, the best brains, to come together. Senator Boston?
Yes.
He consults.
That's right.
He consults with the Minister of Tourism. That's the kind of government that we have. It's a new day in this country. Patriotism, Madam President, that's what this is all about, a nation building. And Madam President, I say again, I thank God that we are led by a man who is a God-fearing man, a visionary leader, who eloquently laid out a plan that Bahamians voted for and would like to see implemented. Who eloquently, this year, the Holy PLP budget, communicated a plan. I don't have the speech that I tabled yesterday, but again, I think it's one that should go to all the schools.
Absolutely.
It should go to the College of the Bahamas. It is something that must be read so people can understand, Madam President. And why? Why are we doing certain things, and what can they expect, and how they should be planning for their future?
Out of the wheelchair.
How we should be say out of the wheelchair. You know, I wasn't going to say that. But since you put on the table, you know, you will never.
Manual wheelchair. Push it out.
He did, you know. It really isn't funny. You know.
He did motions and everything. He didn't say it.
That's why I was going to say it, because I'm so embarrassed.
Yeah,
In our form of governance, the leader of Her Majesty's Royal Opposition really shouldn't be the next, a possible, we don't think it'll happen anytime soon, but a possible next Prime Minister who's a position wheeling the wheelchair. No, that really ain't right.
No.
Really.
It ain't right.
But anyway, thank God, because we'll never have Perry Gladstone say that. It will always be a wonderful vision for the Bahamas, and what we are and what we can be. With that, Madam President, I move the second reading and committal of the bill. Madam President, with your permission, I would move to the second reading of all of the other bills. May I do that? Sorry, defeated. Thank you. Just this one, right?
This one will be the meeting.
Members, the question is that a bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st July 2013 and ending 30th June 2014 be read a second time and committed. As many as are in favor should say aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Yeah. The ayes have it. Ordered that the bill now be read a second time.
The bill for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing the 1st of July 2013 and ending the 30th of June 2014.
Madam President, I move the second reading and committal of a bill for an act for the appropriation of a sum of $295,190,261 for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for capital development for the financial year ending the 30th of June 2014.
Second.
It is moved and seconded that a bill for an act for the appropriation of the sum of $295,190,261 for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for capital development for the financial year ending the 30th of June 2014 be read a second time